Friends, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is your channel, Gnosis Arizona. And this week we are completing with our part 2 of overcoming fear and anxiety. This week, let's speak about eliminating the false sentiment of fear. We want to take you from the illusion of the ego to the internal liberation that comes when these fears are no longer present. And if we can recap what we covered last week in our part 1, as we spoke about overcoming fear and anxiety, we covered the 3 main phases of fear. We spoke very clinically about this, and we said that there are 3 types of fear that are commonly known. There are social anxieties that are fears of being around people. There are spatial phobias, which are the fears that come from being in open spaces and that inner sensation of lack of control. And then there are the fears of everything else. Fears of dogs and needles and spiders and so many other fears that we all share. But we also spoke last week about how is it that fear hijacks the mind. We said that the mind contains a vast collection of memories and that the brain itself is indeed an instrument of the mind, not the mind itself. And in its many abilities, the brain will have the ability to detect memories without you noticing. When this happens, the brain will react, and it will react because the brain only knows how to perceive. And on its many abilities, when it comes to receiving information, the brain only knows how to perceive, whether it is perceiving through the 5 senses of the human machine, or whether it is perceiving from an image, a memory that it is able to retrieve from the vastness of the mind itself. We also spoke about how is it that fear can become habitual. And habitual because there are many parts of the body that get involved in our inner response to fear. We spoke about how the amygdala, that element that exists deep within the center, the core of the brain, is going to be able to detect something. And as it does, we saw the interaction of the hippocampus in the brain as it makes an effort to see what the amygdala has perceived. And at that moment, how is it that the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland react, how neurotransmitters flood into the bloodstream, and how when the prefrontal cortex is trying to make something rational out of what is happening. By then, the endocrine system has already flooded the bloodstream with hormones. And as this happens, well, new cells eventually start replicating. They're coming to expect this overabundance of chemicals, so the new cells will have more receptors for all of these chemistries. And when the chemical is not present, the sensations disappear and the ego will demand them. And this is how we spoke about this. So we spoke about how is it that fear becomes habitual, how is it that we eventually end up experiencing some chemical conditioning in the body itself. And we also learned in part 1 what Samael teaches in his writings on the book, The Fundamentals of Gnostic Education, when he says fear and the search of security have turned planet Earth into a dreadful hell. So we can focus on continuing to build never-ending walls of security, trying to stack safeties one on top of the other, creating protections around us. Or we have the opportunity then to embrace that fundamental teaching from the cosmic, universal law of action and consequence that says, alter the cause, and as a consequence, you will modify the effect. So I guess that if we could put everything that we discussed last week in our part 1 as a one simple takeaway, we can say fear is not an immutable truth. It is simply a false sentiment of the ego. So as we speak of this word sentiments, there is usually confusion between what is a feeling and what is a sentiment. Let's go ahead and clarify that. And to do that, we rely on the teaching of Samael that says that in the etymology of words, we find profound wisdom. We found gnosis in the etymologies. And so we go back. And if we go back in time, we can see that the word sentiment Well, sentiment back from the 12th century, that is in the year in the 1300s, it comes from that root Latin word that is sentimentum, and sentimentum means opinion. But around 200 years later, somewhere in the 14th century, it went from sentimentum to sentiment. And sentiment is a personal experience. It is one's own feeling. And from that perspective, what this is telling us is that sentiment is intimately related to our consideration, to whatever it is that we define as our condition, because it involves some degree of opinion. However, the word feeling comes from around the very same time. Its origin is on the 12th century as well. And feeling originally was very specific to the art of touching. So that speaks about a very clear and defined experience. But later in the 14th century, it was expanded to state that feeling is a conscious emotion. And if it is a conscious emotion, then it is not associated to the ego. It is evidently associated to the consciousness. So sentiments are made by the ego. Sentiments are false, they are fragmented, and they change with whatever ego is in charge of the human machine. So, for example, anything that you consider an offense, any sensation of resentment that you may be experiencing, things like fear, nostalgia, pride, these are all sentiments, and they are all sentiments of the ego. And as sentiments of the ego, they distort reality, they keep the consciousness blind, and they continue triggering and being triggered by memories, by pains, and by stories. But feeling, being a product of the consciousness itself, it arises from the essence, from that divine material that exists within you. And emerging from the essence, emerging from that fraction of what is the human soul of the innermost, then the feeling is true. It is objective. It is permanent. And examples of feelings are peace. An example of a feeling is joy, is serenity, it is comprehension. There is no subjectivity behind that. It is just a feeling that is experienced in its entirety. And so feelings, those feelings that come from the being, they clarify reality. They liberate us. They exist beyond memory and personality. So for all purposes, sentiments are illusions of the ego, while feelings are expressions of the being. To this, at some point, Samael is addressing a group of his most advanced third chamber students, and he is speaking to them about the false sentiment of the ego. And he says, the feeling of the self is always mistaken. He refers here to the sentiment. It is never correct. We must distinguish, we need to distinguish between the feeling of the self and the feeling of the being. We must make a distinction between a sentiment and between a feeling. And what is important is for us to see that we all carry these types of feelings deep within ourselves. I mean, we can all look in the mirror, we can all state right now, I am, I exist. But in reality, we feel that I am. That experience of being is something that we feel. But the condition of I exist, this is something that we sense. I exist is indeed a sentiment. Because this consideration of existing is loaded with opinions. And these opinions are always associated to your worth. I mean, we can speak about I exist and we can make a reference to our current condition. And we will have many justifications to explain why our condition is what it is today. We can have this sense that I exist in terms of our overall life experience. And we will have judgments and opinions that change with time, and they are all associated with our life experience. We can say the same about our abilities. We can say the same about our capacities, about our spiritual discipline. This sentiment that I exist is populated with opinions. And within all of those opinions, when it comes to the topic of fear, all of our fears, whether they are fears of people, fears of spaces, or fears of whatever it is that we are fearful of, they start getting blended and they all create a distortion of reality. As a consequence, this starts blinding our consciousness, and our existence slowly starts collapsing from being an ever-expansive element of the vastness of creation into an existence that has a reality molded, conditioned, structured around memories, around sensations, and many psychological barriers of protection. So, it is really not a feeling, though we feel it, this thing on I exist, but more of a sensation. And so, we have a feeling of I am, and we have a sense that I exist. And what we're seeking here is to empower the consciousness. We are seeking to remove barriers so that consciousness can give us the right feeling, the feeling that is not mistaken. Because when the sentiments become part of the ego, and they are part of the ego, they are fleeting sentiments. I mean, we have sentiments of how we felt when we were a child, and then sentiments when we were teenagers, and sentiments now when we are adults. And at every instance of our lives where we have experienced those sentiments, we have had the conviction that those were the right sentiments, the correct sentiments. But if we could exercise hindsight, retrospection, which of those sentiments was then the real one, if they have been changing? These sentiments are incorrect. They are wrong, again, because there is always a justification behind them. There is always an opinion. There is always a statement behind them, attached to them, giving them form and shape. So we can have sentiments of being afraid, sentiments of being scared, sentiments of feeling uncertain, of being unable, of being incapable, all of them associated to fear, but nevertheless, sentiments. When we remove that, we empower the consciousness to become active, to start becoming, once again, ever expansive. And then the feelings that start emerging from the consciousness are not only objective, but permanent, and they are free of distortions. As that happens, the voice of the consciousness, that voice of the inner Gaum, which is that inner guidance that we have from associated with the archons of karma, that the voice starts becoming stronger. It becomes more impactful. The guidance that we receive becomes a lot more clear. And we can continue moving forward in life, making changes towards higher and superior levels of being. So let me tell you this. There is something that is called as the gift of God. The gift of God in Latin is called the donum Dei. In Spanish, el don de Dios. This is a gift that you get, and you have this inner gift. If you're here listening, it is because there is something within you that has called you. That something is a magnetic center that exists within you that is active, that it's seeking for this particular wisdom. And this call is not ordinary. This call is indeed the gift of God within you. And this gift of God, even though it's made of many different things and it has different definitions, this gift allows you to comprehend these things at a deeper, more profound level. Some people have this gift more developed than others, but the fact is that everyone has this gift of God. This gift is the inner capacity to awaken. This gift is the spark that allows you to start distinguishing between the false sentiments of the self and the true feeling that emanates from the being. Friends, we all have this, but I tell you, not everybody has this donum Dei given to the same degree. It is rare to find people out there who have some perceptible sense of what this gift is. This gift makes you restless for truth. This is the gift that makes you unable to settle just for the simple, plain illusions of the ego. This gift is the one that gives you power to change, to break free from that false feeling of the self. And if you're here, I tell you this, you already have it. What we have to do now is nourish it so that the consciousness can move, can transition into a state of full manifestation. But there are some requirements to do that. And the fact is that we must start from making sure that we are open to change. There is no opportunity to do this if we are still willing to remain attached to all of these fears. We must be open to change. And this brings into memory a beautiful prayer that comes from the magic of the runes, particularly working with the rune Fa, that says, "Enliven my sacred fire so that my consciousness will awaken." We must be open to change. We must be open to ask for this help so that our sacred fire can then become active and that our consciousness can start responding. But again, we must be open to change, because if we remain with attachments, we will make marginal, if any, progress at all. We have to be willing to break with our attachments. I mean, we all want freedom. But it is common to see ourselves in absolute sincerity and realize that even though we want freedom, we somehow find ourselves secretly clinging to many past sufferings, secretly clinging to old pains. The affinity that we have with this is somehow difficult to understand because it breaks all the thinking processes that are logical in nature. Somehow we worship our sufferings. I mean, we go to other people and we tell them stories of our many hardships. We enjoy it when people give us all of their attention, when they are sharing their energy, when they're saying, "Oh, that is so sorry that happened to you. You've had it so bad." It's like there are inferior aspects of us that thrive sharing all of these past lamentations, all of these past sufferings. And as a consequence, when we do that, when we are taking that attention, that energy, the emotion that other people are sharing with us, we end up making our memories harden. We take all of these mental images that we have on the many different stories and stages of our lives, and we make those psychological pictures, those psychological photographs, so much more tangible. We give them so much more value than what they actually warrant. And as a consequence, all of these false sentiments of the ego become stronger. They become so much more difficult to manage and to deal with. So we must break the attachment. There must be a need within us for radical change. And the radical change is necessary because we are speaking here not of just changing a little thing or two. We're speaking here about making a change at the level of the consciousness. We are seeking here to initiate an internal revolution that will result in a complete transformation. We are seeking to empower the consciousness so that we can eradicate everything that exists within us that is indeed inferior. And for this, there are some elements that are necessary. There must be willpower. There must be continuity of purpose. There must be discipline. There must be courage. There must be the ability to contemplate. There must be there the ability to be there and perceive the fear. Perceive it and contemplate it. But contemplate it not like the actor that is trapped in the drama of a movie, that is reacting, responding with so many antics. No. We must contemplate it and perceive it in the same way that the director is observing the drama, in the same way that the director is calling the shots to state what is there that is going to be happening. All of these efforts of this internal revolution, everything that we do to step out of this condition will crystallize within us the substance of sacrifice. And when that happens, There will be cosmic and physiological, psychological processes that will help transform the creative power that exists within you. So this revolution of the consciousness is going to trigger a series of extraordinary events that will take place in the intellectual, in the emotional, and in the physical planes. And for this to happen, we must take our suffering, the suffering by itself, and sacrifice it. Take our sufferings and see them eliminated. So I want you to know this. In this work that has to do with ourselves, this work that is intimate, that is secret, that is not to be shared with anyone, there are 3 concepts that we must understand. Concept number 1 is we must understand the work on you, the work on oneself, and the purpose of disintegrating these psychological aggregates of fear. We must understand that the more we eliminate from this, the more consciousness we will be able to liberate. Liberating that consciousness means that there will be new virtues, new faculties, new abilities, new powers, new conditions, new opportunities, all of these things together, new laws, new bodies, all of these things together, that when they converge, when they come together, they crystallize for us what is indeed a radiant soul. We must understand the work on ourselves. The second thing that we must understand is the work with others. It is crucial that we learn to relate to other people. Our psychological aggregates are always in telepathic communication with other egos of everyone else. Egos of your neighbors, egos of your family, egos of your children, egos of people at work. They're always interconnected. And every time that you embark on doing any work that has to do with internal transformation, there will be a force opposed to it. This force is a force of countertransference. And this force is always opposed to the work that you're doing and in the same magnitude. If you're very committed, if you bring strong force to make this internal change, that force of countertransference is going to be just as strong, but in the other direction. And so you can expect that the moment you decide that you're going to make this change, your neighbors are going to be calling you on the phone. They're going to show up in the front door to speak about some random thing. Situations will happen in family. Things will happen at work. Things will happen at school. Distractions will show up to give you reasons to push this aside. So we must learn to work with others. Understand that these contributions, these telepathic communications of the ego will continue happening. These obstacles will continue to show up and we must overcome them. But also, Samael says, if we work on ourselves, we must also lift the torch to illuminate the path for others, to show others the path. As you put this into practice and you start seeing the change that it makes for you, at an intellectual, emotional, in your environment, raise the torch of that wisdom. Share it with others. Remember, the more we give, the more we receive. That applies both for the inferior things that we give, and that applies as well for those superior things that we can share and give to others without expecting anything in return. The third thing that we must understand is the love for the work. Samael says that today we live life enjoying the taste of life. And because of that, we love our sufferings and we love when we feel at peace. But in reality, peace means that people are not meddling in our business and that they're not interrupting our fantasies. And that is a false concept of peace. We must trade that flavor of life for the flavor of the work. And sometimes the flavor of the work is a little bitter. But the rewards from the work can be very fruitful. So we must learn to develop the love for the work. We must work for the work itself. So if we are initiating this revolution of the consciousness, if we are setting a step forward with discipline, with consistency, with willpower, with tenacity, where is it that we can start this change to eliminate these fears? You would remember from our part 1 that we closed our session speaking of those 3 forces that move everything in creation. We spoke of 3 gunas. We spoke of rajas, sattva, and tamas. We spoke about those 3 forces as a reference to the cosmic universal law of the Holy Three, the Triyamashikamno. And we stated, the number 3 always creates. How can we make use of this cosmic law to initiate this work? Holy affirmation, holy negation, holy conciliation. What is our holy affirmation? Dear friend, we must be willing to perceive the fear. This does not mean that you're afraid of spiders. You're going to go grab the first spider that you find out. No. We are not here to put you in danger. And of course, bound by the law of accidents, well, we would be bound to make many mistakes. That is not what we mean. We must take advantage that the brain does not know the difference between what it is perceiving through the senses or what it is perceiving from the mind. So in this holy affirmation, for you to be willing to perceive the fear, do an exercise of retrospection. Let's go back and enjoy the benefit of hindsight. Let's look back at those moments in which you have found yourself fearful of whatever it is that induces the fear on you, whether it is people, spaces, or whatever else it may be. And revisit that in your mind. This descent into those scary places of that dark side of our psychological moon, they're very fruitful because you can do them in the safety of your own space, in the privacy of your own privacy. And as you are making yourself willing to perceive this fear, you will open the door to observe and to comprehend. Because observation and comprehension take us to the door of elimination. How often should you do this? A lot. Samael says we constantly have to judge ourselves to know what is it that we have and what is it that we're missing. So this holy affirmation, being willing to perceive the fear, embrace it. That's a good opportunity. Revisit that event in your mind. Revisit it with serenity. Be reflective. Contemplate. If this is the holy affirmation that takes us to the holy negation, what should we do once we see that event? Make an effort to identify what is important about that thing that you are perceiving. Also, what is not important? Dissect as if you were a surgeon with a very sharp scalpel. Start dissecting that event that you are revisiting in your mind. What is important about this? What is not important? Something that is not important, that you will consider not important today, put it aside. Set that aside. Focus on what is important and then walk into the holy conciliation. And the holy conciliation is going to invite you to say, what is real about this? What is not real? Holy affirmation, holy negation, holy conciliation. Move yourself into the space of being willing to be there and perceive. As you're perceiving, what is important about this? What is not? Focus on what you see there as important and then take it to a third level. What is real about this? What is not real? This type of comprehension is going to start shedding a lot of this weight from your shoulders. But the intellect can only take you so far. As a matter of fact, Samael says, we cannot overcome the false feeling of self with intellect alone. We must invoke of superior forces. And the reason for that is because all of these creations that exist within the mind cannot do anything with them other than harbor them. The mind of the ego particularly, will justify them. It will negate them. It will call them different. It will hide them. It will send them deeper into the subconsciousness. It will do all those things. It will keep them outside of the detection level of the intellect. But that does not help. Because the moment that the right situations are present, the moment the right causes exist, the right conditions manifest, those things come back, and they come back with a vengeance. So we cannot overcome these false sentiments of the ego just with the intellect. We can make some progress. That progress is limited. Superior forces must be invoked. We tell you this because we want you to start improving, but you must not be fooled. You will make some progress, but making some progress does not mean that you have eliminated everything with just one or two of these exercises. To not be fooled, let me tell you this. Samael tells us, if you're eliminating something, if you claim that you have been working on comprehending and getting rid of something, but the sentiment itself continues to exist, if the sentiment itself persists, then there is something that is failing in the work. Then there is something that has not yet been completed. Samael says, this simply indicates that the I that we thought that we had disintegrated has not actually been disintegrated. If the sentiment remains, there is still some more work to be done. Remember this. If that sentiment is still present, that means there is still more work that has to be done. If you are evoking from your mind specific event that brought about this or that fear, it does not matter which one, and you still feel when the situation is similar, when the conditions start aligning, that fear is coming back, there is still something more that must be done. Go back and revisit that again. Go back and look into those things that you initially believed that they were not important. What of that is actually truly important? And as you come back, ask again, what is real? What is not? This will help you move even a little further. But if that sentiment still persists and the intellect is not taking you anywhere else, then follow the guidance of the masters. They say superior forces must be invoked. And for this, I invite you to work on awakening your inner fire. Let's not forget the words of the great masters of all the masters, when he said, knock and it will be open. Ask and you will receive. Every ego that you comprehend must be eliminated. In this case, all of those fears. But we need of a superior force to help us. And that force is that inner fire. Friends, within each and every one of us, there lives a hidden power of transformation. This power of transformation is the sacred fire. This is the spiritual energy that dissolves all of our illusions. This is the fire that awakens our consciousness. In the ancient traditions, back in those old millenary schools of wisdom, they have called this fire many different names. In the East, this fire is known as Kundalini. In the West, this is known as the fire of Pentecost. This is the fire of the Holy Spirit. This is that fire that we see emerging from the heads of the apostles on the day of Pentecost. This sacred fire is the same fire that makes that halo of light over the heads of the angels. This sacred fire in the East is Kundalini. For us, that is the fire of the Holy Spirit. This fire is the inner torch that burns away the false self, and it reveals the true being. This is the fire that helps the consciousness become free. And allow me to say, friends, you will not be able to overcome the false sentiment of the ego with just the intellect. We need willpower, but superior help is always needed. And this help is already a part of you. It exists within you right here and right now. And this is the fire of your Divine Mother. This is the sacred fire of Kundalini, which is a gift of the divine. Kundalini, your Divine Mother, is a derived aspect of your being. And it is this fire what transforms the lead of our personality into the gold of the Spirit. It is what burns away illusion to give us clear reality. It is what burns our fear and takes us into the space of freedom. And if you are here, that means that you already carry this inner fire within you. That means that this magnetic center is asking of you to ignite this fire. It's waiting for you to awaken it. But this fire will not awaken mechanically. There is nothing that you can do with affirmations that will turn on this fire. There is nothing that any guru can do for you to go and ignite that fire for you. This is a fire that does not respond to the mechanical impulses of nature. This fire awakens because of the merits of the heart. We can invoke of the help of our Divine Mother based on the purity of our intention. How much effort we put into this, how much of that substance of sacrifice becomes crystallized. That is the material that you can bring in your hands as an offering and give it to your Divine Mother. Purity of intention, sacred discipline, transmuting your creative energies, watching how is it that you use of your creative power every day. You negate yourself the opportunity to react in ways that are inferior. That helps awaken the fire. You negating yourself to give your ear to gossip and slander. That helps safeguard that water. It makes available all of this energy for your inner spiritual work, for your transformation. And of course, prayer. Invoke of your Divine Mother, invoke the innermost. Ask for guidance. Ask to show you what is the one thing that we must be watchful for. What is the one thing that we must work next? And observe the images that come into your mind. Invoke for superior help so that you can see, so that you can remember, so that you can perceive in ways that there is no doubt that what you are seeing, remembering, and perceiving is because of the intervention of these great masters that are standing by waiting to help. And they can only do it if you ask for help. Otherwise, they would be interfering with your free will. And free will is part of a cosmic law. Invoke of this superior work. Invoke of this superior help so that you can start building the memory of the esoteric work. Because once that fire becomes active, not only your magnetic centers become active, faculties start becoming so much more tangible. This fire, if anything, is an ally of your essence. It is your Divine Mother nourishing your consciousness, helping burn every psychic aggregate that has kept your consciousness trapped. Friends, without this superior work, without this superior help, any progress in the work becomes very limited. Any real transformation becomes impossible. So we can start with a revolution of the consciousness and go straight into working intellectually. Holy affirmation, holy negation, and holy conciliation. And as we start seeing ourselves being limited, we immediately start invoking the help of our Divine Mother. Ideally, we start asking for this help from the very beginning. And we ask her, once we comprehend, I ask you, I beg you with my soul, with my heart, that you bring of your sacred fire and you reduce this defect to a cosmic dust. And she will. And she will. And if you still feel like that sentiment of that defect is still present, that means that there is still more work to be done. Go back. Ask for that help. Offer more of your effort, more of that crystallized substance of sacrifice. Keep negating yourself to the gossip and the slander. Don't give yourself to the inferior reactions of the mind. Don't. And as you safeguard that creative energy, you have more of that spiritual power available for this work, and you continue offering it. And she continues helping you. The more you give, the more you receive. And the more you work on this, it will naturally be followed by a physical revolution. You will notice that there will be a revolution in the universe around you, outside of you. And there would be a revolution in the universe that exists within you. What is it that you can expect to see happening outside of you? As some of these defects get eliminated, you will start making changes to higher, superior levels of being. Every time that you take a step forward, that level of being just moves 1 degree higher. The changes that you will start noticing is that of the many people that surround you, those people who are not interested in seeing you change, they will start fading away. Those people who crave being around you for your energy, for your attention, those people are going to start fading away in the background. Suddenly, you will start coming across new people, new connections, new opportunities, new relationships, new challenges in your inner work. And all of these things will be set in place. They will be conducive for you to continue with your inner work. And that is just outside of you. Inside of you, that sexual and creative power that was being sent incorrectly through different areas, that fire that was condensing in a way that was inferior and was hardening, strengthening these psychological aggregates, that energy is not going to be wasted like that anymore. It's going to start flowing naturally. And as you start taking this work into higher octaves, as you start receiving that guidance, that direction, as you continue receiving of this wisdom, suddenly you'll realize that you can embrace something that is called the super dynamic of love. And the work that is involved in this superior aspect of the work will make the work alchemical in nature. Thanks to this energy, all of the great adepts of consciousness, those who have truly achieved the awakening, they have become enlightened. Enlightened because they have been able to eradicate all of the inferior, dark aspects of themselves, and the only thing that is manifesting is the light of the being. Many of them have become immortal. This happens inside. And on the outside, that light of yours starts shining. And remember, we must understand this. Learn to relate to others. As you're seeing these changes in you, rise that torch of light. Be that beacon of light and wisdom, sharing of your experience so that others can benefit as well from this particular work. This is the path that all of the great Buddhas have followed. Buddhas are illuminated ones. But there are two types of Buddhas. There are the Sravakas, the Buddhas Pratyekas, and then there are the Bodhisattvas. There are the Maitreyas. The Sravakas, the Pratyekas, these are Buddhas that are illuminated, but they work intensely only for their individual enlightenment. The Bodhisattvas, those Maitreya Buddhas, they seek enlightenment for all. They seek to renounce their own happiness so that they can come back to continue carrying the torch of wisdom to illuminate the path so that others can follow. They renounce of their happiness just to continue working for others. So the best path to follow is the path of service. Lift that torch of wisdom for others. The more you give, the more you receive. But now that you know this, now that we told you to expect the effects of the force of countertransference, please beware of the many dangers that exist in the path. There are even advanced aspirants on this work that can be deceived by the false sense of the ego. They will be fooled by the false sense of self. So when you do this work, focus on working on disintegrating those psychological aggregates in their totality. Don't just refine them. Don't reduce them to something that looks non-threatening that you feel that you can overcome. No. Work with your Divine Mother until you see those fears completely eliminated. If you know that the sentiment, if it still persists, there is still work that must be done, don't hesitate to go back and revisit those events. And remember, holy affirmation, holy negation, holy conciliation. Be there, willing to perceive, define what is important of this, what is not. And of those things that seem so important, what of this is real? What of this is not? Invoke your Divine Mother. Eliminate this, please. Continue offering the crystallized substance of sacrifice. Continue moving those cosmic and psychological processes so that they can continue transforming within you. So, nourish then the connection between your essence, between your consciousness and your being. This consciousness that we have, this magnetic center that is active today, it is asking of us to irrigate with our creative waters those seeds within us that must be awakened. And we can nourish this connection with our being by eliminating these inferior aspects of us, by getting rid of all of these many different phases and aspects of fear, by cultivating virtues, by serving others, by sacrificing for others as a humanity. So now that you know this, the choice is yours. Dear friends, this is what we wanted to share with you this evening. Everything that we have today, we have been able to source it from the books of Fundamentals of Gnostic Education, written by Samael Aun Weor, from his lecture to his advanced students called The False Sentiment of the Ego, and some other information that we got from online sources just to be able to help us here with this. So, dear friends, again, this has been Eliminate the False Sentiment of Fear. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. May all beings be happy.